Welcome to the Raising Values podcast, where the traditional family talks. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and Spotify, and be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You can support the Raising Values podcast through Patreon. Phil and Gillian are behind the mic, and we hope you enjoy the show. Good morning. Welcome back to Raising Values, or welcome to Raising Values. I've been watching too much YouTube with Piper. Today is Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to all of our men out there that lead that role in the family or with your children. And I've already sent my father-in-law and my dad a happy Father's Day, and my father-in-law got a big laugh out of what I sent him. You don't know what I sent him, do you?
I don't know yet.
I said, Happy Father's Day from your favorite child, your daughter-in-law.
I mean, that's probably pretty fair because he definitely likes you a lot better than me.
I don't think that's true.
I mean, the smartest thing I ever did was get married and give him a grandchild. Everything else has been aggravating him.
Right? And we got to spend some good time with my dad yesterday, so that was really nice. And then today is your day, so happy Father's Day to you, and we love and appreciate you. And I would just like to tell you from your reel that you posted today on the Matter of Facts page, you've never gotten a tie for Father's Day.
I know, but like the tie...
Or socks, or underwear.
But the tie is like the stereotypical stand-in for the gift that fathers get on Father's Day. And the reel I posted on Instagram was, I guess, more of a... like it was very heartfelt. Like I think that, and at least from my perspective, because I don't pretend to speak for all fathers out there, but I really think like our greatest gift is knowing that our children benefited from having us around. You know what I'm saying? Like something I taught my child, some experience I had with her, something I did impacted her life in a positive direction. And will set her up for future success and happiness. And that's the only gift I ever want for Father's Day. Like, that's...
Well, I think it's it's an important show. Maybe I'm biased. I think all of our shows are important. But Father's Day can be a wonderful day for most families. It can also be a very hard day. Maybe fathers are gone and they've passed away or whatever. Maybe the relationship with your father isn't or hasn't always been the best, or there's all sorts of scenarios that could have happened in your life.
And I mean, you and I've gone through this with my very first Father's Day. Sometimes fathers aren't around for Father's Day. Sometimes they're working, sometimes they're deployed.
That's right. You were gone.
Yeah. My first Father's Day I spent working halfway across the country, providing for my family, because at the time, like...
Yeah, it was kind of a sad day. I mean, Piper was born on the day after Mother's Day, so that was the first and best Mother's Day present I have ever received. And then you were gone for the first Father's Day, but I mean, she was a month old. So
she was a sack of potatoes.
Yeah, and so it was really your day. But I think we've made up for it since then. Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I guess I'm saying is just to acknowledge that there are lots of reasons why Father's Day might be a little bit of an emotional day for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. They're not able to spend it with their fathers for a variety of reasons. And there's fathers that may not be able to spend it with their wives and their children, and that's hard. Well,
and two, I think this episode is definitely gonna. We joked back and forth, because Phil and I start to talk about what are we going to talk about for this next episode or whatever the next episode that's coming up. What are we going to call it? Whatever. And Phil joked toxic masculinity, and I was like, most people will understand that, coming from you, especially if they've listened to Matter of Facts. But if they're new listeners to Raising Values and they don't know us very much, they're going to be like, wait, what? Toxic masculinity. But, we don't have any banners for this show, so Phil and I are just kind of shooting from the hip. But it is a topic that we feel is super important. We've said it on past episodes, the male presence in the home, the father, the husband in the home, is so super important for leading the family and creating a foundation for their children. It's something like, for instance, I had a conversation with Piper probably a few weeks. Well, it was right at the end of school, so it's been about a month now.
It's already been a month.
I know.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, not quite a month, but almost. But we were talking about boys and, crushes and
Boys, huh?
when she gets to that stage of having a boyfriend
When she's 18.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Her only boyfriend is not going to be just Jesus Christ.
Why not?
Because we have to live in reality.
She's married to the Holy Spirit.
No, she's not. I mean, no. Anyway, I used you as an example. I was like, make sure that you look for someone that treats you the way that your father treats me. And so I said, you don't deserve anything less than that. So it's having a father that is just present in the home is such a game changer for children, boys and girls, their children.
Well, I mean, my perspective on like mothers and fathers, because and inevitably whenever you get into this conversation, you're a lot of times speaking about like statistical averages and the median personality of men versus women. And I do think that there are certain personalities that are just much more ingrained in men. You could argue whether that's biological, psychological, or if that's sociological, if that's society that makes us that different, male-female gender roles. You could argue that, but regardless, there are certain personalities that are just much more intrinsically masculine and male and much more intrinsically feminine and female. And I firmly believe, and I think the statistics backs me up on this, that like both parties have to be present for the betterment of the child. Because like whenever we see the statistics around like single parenthood, those children have a much rougher time in life. Mm-hmm. So I firmly believe that by only having the mother or only having the father, the child's missing out. Mm-hmm. But from like a personal aspect, I've been very frank with you about the fact that like it's always been super important to me how we conduct ourselves as a married couple, not just for you and me, but because the only guidepost she will ever have for what to look for in a husband, if she chooses to be married, is me. Mm-hmm. I very well might be the first man she ever compares a potential suitor to. So I have to be on my game so that she goes looking for the best guy she can find, and refuses to tolerate the nonsense and the games and all the stupid stuff that young boys will try to perpetrate on young girls for their own purposes. Mm-hmm. And somebody pointed out to me a long time ago, they said if the father is present and that young girl grows up truly knowing what love and respect is, she will instantly recognize when she's being played by a boy. Mm-hmm. But if the father is not present and not around, then she will fall for the first person that says you're pretty, which I kind of put stock in. And from the opposite perspective, if you're a young boy, the only way you will ever know what to look for in a potential wife is your mother.
And how to treat them.
Exactly.
Hopefully. I mean,
so that husband-wife dynamic does filter down to your children, and it becomes their example for who to look for and how to conduct yourselves as husband, as wife, as boyfriend, as girlfriend. So, I mean, that's why I think that specifically to our situation, with me being a father, having a daughter, like, there is this whole list of things I can never teach her. I can't teach her how to be a woman, how to be a young lady, how to be ladylike. I mean, I'm doing good just to not to use teach her not to use four-letter words in polite company, but
you're working on that?
I try sometimes. But, like, you have to teach her how to be a woman and how to be a lady. I can't do that. Mm-hmm. But what I can teach her is, if a boy approaches you, this is how he should treat you. Because if he doesn't treat you like I treat your mother, there's a problem.
Right. Yeah, totally agree. And there's been such a war on... You got to put that one up.
I have to throw that up. Okay, so like I understand when I say my daughter's not dating anybody. She's married to the Holy Spirit. I am mostly joking. Like, I fully expect there will come a day when my daughter will meet some boy and have doe eyes, and I get all that. And I'm mostly emotionally prepared for that. Mostly, kinda. But like,
Let me wait before you continue. Let me fill in the gap a little bit. One of the comments on the stream said, "Oh, your daughter's going to be a nun too." So that's what Phil is now discussing.
but like, understand. Like, I when I say that, I am mostly joking. My big thing, and
Wait. Mostly joking?
Mostly joking. I know she's gonna date boys one day. There's nothing I can do to stop that.
Okay, so you do live in a sort of reality then, right?
Yes, I'm allowed to lie to myself every now and then to make me feel better about the situation. But,
oh Lord.
But I also say that, like, even though I know there's that possibility way down the road, I also tell people, I'm like, just as long as that young man, whoever he may be out there, eventually understands I'm dad, I'm her protector, and you have to deal with me if she comes home in any kind of a different condition than the way I had left her with you.
Mm-hmm. That's as she's dating, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And married.
And married. You're okay. All right.
Dang.
I guess so. Yeah. I guess my dad would still be like that protective.
If you showed up on your dad's front doorstep with a black eye and sobbing, tell me he wouldn't want to come over here and sort me out.
It is you. You're the one who's tapping on the table.
Sorry.
One of our listeners said there's a lot of tapping on the table.
Yes.
So,
and with this particular recording setup, that's a tripod mount sitting right on the table. So if we bump the table, it picks it up. My bad.
Yes, I think if I did come home with a black eye, my dad would definitely have something to say.
But if I socked you in the eye, you would just sort me out yourself in my sleep.
Well, yeah, I would walk up to my dad's doorstep and be like, "It's okay, it's handled."
I need some help. I need a shovel.
I need a shovel, Dad.
And some property.
And you have some, so I need some help. But what I was saying was, I'm trying to think of my words. Men have been, what is the word I'm looking for?
I don't know, but if you give me a synonym, maybe I can help you head towards it.
They've been the bad guy for so long. They've been made to be the bad guy.
Oh, bad cop? Oh, no.
No, I mean like in society, in America.
About how fathers have been kind of marginalized and demonized.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Would we say men in general, or... I think that's fair.
I think it's fair. I think, you hear it all the time about how the put your tinfoil hats on, that men have been removed from the home and it's been made easier for women to raise their children by themselves and they don't need a man and look, you can do it by yourself. And of course the phrase that we said, I think on the last episode, the scariest phrase in U.S. history is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help," where so many women have fallen into that trap. And I think we've been seeing for quite some time now, the downfall of that, of removing the man from the household and empowering, not so much empowering women to say, you can do it by yourself. And that was the other thing I said to Piper in that conversation was, don't fall into that trap. I'm totally believe that you are strong enough to raise a family by yourself, be a single mom, whatever, but no, you can't. There are certain things that a man in the household, in a marriage, in a relationship with their children, has to be there to provide, and that you won't be able to provide. And so, therefore, there are going to be things that fall short. Now, that's not to say that a woman needs to stay with a man just because they're a man, even though they're abusive or whatever. But like we said when we opened the show, there's certain situations that fatherhood and everything else falls into. Well, there's certain situations for that as well. So
I think like from my perspective, and the one, because we've brought this up with Piper because she knows people who have been in that situation of being single mothers, and then she's always heard us talk about how like husband and wife really should be together in this whole raising children thing. But then she contrasts the way we live with the way other people live where they are single mothers. And she's asked me, like, why? What's, like, you told me you were supposed to be married before you had children, but these other people are not married and have children, or they're divorced. Like, what's going on?
Yeah,
and
she picked up on that young.
Well, Piper's always picked up on things. Piper is used, like, I can't remember what age it was, but once she reaches a certain age, she's usually the one that brings things to us for an explanation, because she's very aware of what's going on around her in the world. And I'm happy to hear that when she sees things that conflict with what she's been taught, she immediately comes to us for an explanation to rectify these two things, rather than just say, well, mom and dad are morons, and that must be the way to do things. But I've always told our daughter, I'm like, I believe that if a mother is unfortunately forced into this situation where she has to raise children by herself, do I believe she can do it? Yeah, I think she can. I don't think there's any reason why a woman, if her husband was abusive, or if he, God forbid, she was a widow, I don't believe there's any reason she couldn't. But the statistics don't lie. It is apparently infinitely more difficult than to do it within a stable marriage, within a stable family. Because if it wasn't, then you wouldn't see the rate of like poverty and institutionalization through mental health or through the prison system. You wouldn't see those incidences like 4 and 5 times higher from children of single parent versus married couple. You would like that is such an obvious gap. There's no way that's accidental. So what I've always told Piper is, I'm like, if you're ever in this situation, I believe you can do it. It will be difficult. It will not be fun. It will not be pleasant. It will tax you because you now have to stand in for both parents. You don't get to just be a mom at that point.
Yeah.
You have to be the mom and the dad by yourself without that other person to lean against. So I've always explained to her, I'm like, there are people who are in this situation for one reason or another, and it breaks my heart for them because I know that that's hard. I know it's harder than if they had chosen or whatever, however it happened. But like, if they were in the situation your mother and I were in, I know their life would be a much happier and much more productive and much easier. But that's not the situation they're in, so they have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So I've always tried to get Piper to understand, like, yes, it is obviously very possible for a woman to have children with a man she's not married with. But that's not what I want for you, because I know how hard it is.
Yeah. It takes me back to high school when my senior English teacher, and I will always remember Miss Harmon saying this, we were working on the yearbook, and it was just a bunch of girls, and how we got on this subject, I have no idea. But she said the most profound thing to my 17-year-old or 18-year-old self at the time, and she said, choose wisely who you lay with, because you may have to deal with them for the rest of your life. And that stuck with me. So obviously, I mean, here we are 20 years, 20 years later. How long have I been out of high school? A long time. Anyway, long time.
Graduated what, 03?
02.
02?
So what am I, 20? I can't do the math. 21 years. Anyway, so yeah, she said that, and there was something that we were watching, you and I, the other day. It was this little, it wasn't a meme, it wasn't a GIF or anything, it was like a reel or whatever on Instagram. And I felt really bad for this woman, but then I didn't. She called in and she was, her ex-husband was a dirtbag, and he doesn't pay child support, and he doesn't help take care of the kids, and he left them high and dry, like he went out to get cigarettes and he never came back, kind of deal. And the man was the host of the show was being so honest, like blunt, like seriously, like saying, you made a stupid decision. And she kept digging this hole deeper and deeper, and how, before they even had children, he was abusive to her and was beating her. And he goes, so you've always made stupid decisions, and now you want this, whatever he called, I can't remember what he called this man, to pay up, and he's never going to make that choice. Like, you've put yourself in this position. But, that kind of just, I don't know, that was a roundabout way of saying, I can always remember what Miss Harmon had said to some of the senior girls in high school.
Put that on a t-shirt, for God's sakes.
What?
Be careful who you lay with. You might have to deal with them for the rest of life. And for men too. Like, I have a slightly humorous version of this that says, don't lay in bed with anyone crazier than you are. Which is kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I feel like it's kind of some of the same thing. Like, be discriminating and choosy about who you engage in certain activities with that might have long-term consequences that you don't want to deal with that person, whether it's because they're crazy or a dirtbag that won't pay child support and beat you. Like, regardless, I think that this is definitely one of the ways, like, we've kind of advocated bucking this trend of, like, very casual relationships, because I feel like, it's one thing to, like, go out to coffee with a person that you barely know and spend 20 minutes chit-chatting about whatever. It's a totally different thing to engage in a behavior that could lead to a child being produced with a random person you met 20 minutes ago. And, like, I see so many people, our generation, that they regard that activity as being, it's just casual. It's like a handshake. It's like a hug. It's like a whatever. And I'm like, no, it's slightly different. There's a little bit more consequence or ramifications involved there. And, we have this whole generation of people of kids who are being raised in households where mom and dad either were married for a short time, were never married at all, hate each other, can't co-parent. And we're raising a generation of young men who don't know what it's like to be a man or to be masculine, or they don't understand because they've never had a male role model. Because the only person that is in their life has been telling them men are trash their entire life, starting with the one that produced them. Or we have young ladies who are being raised in a home without a male who don't understand what to look for in a potential man. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to go out into the world one day and fall for the first person that tells them you're pretty.
Yeah.
Because they just... And, like, all of that to me is heartbreaking. Like, I am a big personal accountability, personal responsibility person. I feel like if you make dumb decisions, you own that. Like, suck it up. I just slapped myself in the mic, pick that up. I'm going to have to stop. But, if you make dumb decisions, you eat the consequences. And I have no sympathy for a person who is a victim of the consequences of their own actions. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can sympathize to a degree and say, well, wow, that sucks, but I'm immediately going to follow up with, but you put yourself there. Like, you dug the hole and jumped into it. Mm-hmm. Why do I feel bad about the hole you're in? You put yourself there. Mm-hmm. But I feel horrible for the kids because they were born in that hole and they didn't ask to be there. And very often the path to digging it out is like years of dumb luck and hard work on their behalf, or somebody mentors them and puts them on the path.
Yeah, mentors them, puts them on the path. But then it's up to that child then to break that cycle.
Yes.
Because a lot of times they're going to follow in those same footsteps of the parent that raised them, and they're going to believe, because of maybe the mother's frustrations and negative thoughts towards men, that daughter could believe that for the rest of her life, and those sons could believe that for the they'll never feel like they can amount to much. But there's so many generational curses that are created out of the home that's not that doesn't have all of the pieces that need to be there. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to say? And so now your kid is having to work even harder to break that cycle. And it's really unfortunate to see the cycle continue. And, anyway, so, yeah.
Yeah. So like those are a lot of my thoughts, and
We have a lot of little sounds coming from the table today, and I'm very sorry.
I'm gonna have to tighten up some bolts apparently.
Sorry, Stuart.
But I don't know. Like I try not to get on a big kick because like I know that there is like that one single mother out there that is like slaying it and handling her business and raising her kids right. I get all that, but for every one that is truly succeeding in raising well-balanced, well-behaved children, there's about 5 others that are just falling short in some way. So,
Yeah.
but as far as like fathers, like I mean, I've already talked about how I think that father becomes their blueprint for potential mate or for how to treat their potential mate. And I mean, I feel like there are some very traditional, some people would sneer at that, but like some very traditional masculine roles that fathers fill in the household. You know, provider, which I feel like has been somewhat turned a little bit in more recent times as more and more women have entered the workplace. Men are not
Yeah.
traditionally the sole provider. But again, there are those people out there that scream, you know, gender inequality and pay gap and all that. But the truth of the matter is that men, on the average, tend to make more. And a lot of that's because of the professions we go into. Like you and I have this conversation all the time about how we both work, we split the bills roughly in proportion to how much we make, and I make a fair bit more than you. Mm-hmm. But it's also because like the professions you've chosen since college don't pay a lot.
No.
And never have and never will. And like you went into those professions knowing that because the money wasn't your primary concern. It was you wanted a sense of fulfillment, you wanted the things you were doing you felt benefited the community, and more recently you took a step down in pay because you were seeking better work-life balance, which I'm in full support of. Mm-hmm. And my career choices, on the other hand, have pretty much been guided by how can I provide the best for my family, and I don't care how aggravating it is, how frustrating it is, how much hair I've lost, you know, in the last
I thought you
10
said that was
years.
me.
It's you, and it's my work, and it's her. It's all three of y'all
Well,
have made all this fall out.
But saying that, you know, yeah, you are the main provider for the family. You do make more money than I do. But the conversation we had with my dad last night was very profound, and it was unexpected. I really, it was very heartfelt to hear my dad say that he really regretted choosing to work more, feeling like he had to make more and more money to provide and whatever, but that it did mean that he was not going to be in the home much, because my dad did work a lot. He traveled a lot for work. I mean, he was an environmental engineer. He worked with the legislature, and he wrote a lot of papers, and he did a lot of stuff. He was very brilliant. He is a very, very brilliant man, but that meant that dad wasn't home a lot, but we had the money. And here he is, almost 71 years old, telling me last night how much he regrets chasing that, you know, feeling. I said, you know, I told you, I didn't tell him this. I just told him, you know, Dad, you've always been a good dad, and whatever. But I told you, it's like, yeah, I would have loved to have Dad home more when we were kids. As an adult now, being a mother and parent, I understand what that pull is to make more money, to be able to do more for your family, to be able to go more and, you know, have the means to provide and have fun and, you know, all that stuff. I wish that, I don't know. I know that he says he regrets it. I know that me and my sisters have all told him, basically, stop. It's fine. You know, everything worked out the way it was supposed to work out. That may be something he always regrets and feels guilty of, and he's going to take it to the grave one day. But it is a trap that I do feel a lot of responsible fathers and responsible men in the family take to heart and strive for, thinking, well, if I just worked a little bit more, if I changed jobs, and it's going to mean that I'm traveling more, but there'll be more money in the home, and we'll be able to provide more, whatever. But he had made the comment to you of how he wished that he was smarter at the same age that you are, wiser, and made the decisions that you've made. And how many times have you been told, look, let's go on and get you into management in the government, and step you up into a 13 or whatever, which does mean a lot more pay, but it also means dad's not going to be home as much. And so for now, and what you told dad last night was, you have a young family, you have an 11-year-old child, and that advancement in your career means that you're not going to be as present in the most vital time that she's going to need you, which is these preteen and teenage years. Yeah, she needs you as a child, those little bitty years, and Lord knows I did, but now's the time where she's going to be looking to dad. She's already a daddy's girl, that will never change.
Oh no, I think that foundation has been set.
But I do think that I think what you have done, the sacrifices you've made the sacrifices of not bettering your career and going further and getting paid more and whatever, are going to pay off in the long run for our own child. But, it's very sad to watch those men fall into that trap like my dad did, of thinking, well, this is really the only way I can provide for them, is to work more hours and to make more money and to be away from the home more. When, I almost said this to him last night, but I probably have made him feel even worse. And I think I've said this on this podcast, not this episode, but this podcast before, and maybe on yours. My favorite memories of my dad was on Saturday when he didn't work, and I would go into the garden with him, and Daddy had these beautiful rose gardens and herb gardens growing up, and literally people would stop. They would pull into our driveway with their scissors and shears to cut the roses from Daddy's gardens. We were always fighting people off. Get out of our yard and stop cutting the roses. But we would spend time in the garden on Saturdays or in the greenhouse on Saturdays, and I love plants. I think it definitely fostered my appreciation for medicinal plants and things like that. But that time spent with my dad meant more to me than any amount of money that he was ever going to bring home.
More than going to the beach?
Oh.
Ooh.
Oh, that's hard. Yes, more than going to the beach, because eventually, well, now, those moments can no longer happen. Physically, he cannot sit in a garden with me anymore and do that. And the last time he did that was with Piper when she was probably 3 or 4 years old. But those were all great memories to have, and those were the moments that I appreciated the most from my dad, is that he took the time, because we didn't just talk about plants and gardening. We took the time and he talked about boyfriends, and how is this boyfriend treating you, and what is the response when you did this, and blah blah blah. And so there was a lot of bonding that happened in the gardens, in the greenhouse, and things like that, that no amount of extra pay or overtime would have ever compensated for.
Yeah. And understand, I did take a promotion 3 years ago now that was a pretty decent little bump in our pay. And I guess my perspective, and maybe where I've tried to balance that want and that responsibility of providing for the family with being here with the family, is that I've always taken the personality of this is what I can provide at the moment, and we're going to scale our living to that. Mm-hmm. When you took this recent step down in pay, we were very frank about the fact that, okay, well, we're going to have to cut back on eating out. Money for vacations is not going to be there. We're going to have to save a little bit longer to make those kinds of things happen. It wasn't a conversation about stay in the career where you spend less time with your child and you are more stressed out because it wasn't healthy for you, the conversation was never staying that for the money. It was, we'll make the lifestyle meet the money. Like we've managed to make the ends meet, making substantially less than we do now when we went through periods of lack, and we've lived high on the hog when we've had extra. Like, that's just the way we've always been. It's when the money is there, enjoy it, and when the money's not there, then we tighten our belt, we make it work. Like, we've lived through that. Mm-hmm. But even when money's been tight, we've still been putting money away in savings, we've still been putting money away into retirement. I've still been making extra payments on the mortgage and the cars, because that's the only debt we have. Thank God we don't have credit cards or anything like that. But like, we've always looked at our discretionary income as discretionary. And when we didn't have it, we didn't spend it. We didn't drive ourselves into debt. And I feel like that was where I took the lead more when it came to budgeting and financial matters, because I've just always had I've had a really good head on my shoulders about that, since we've been married. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Like, there are certain careers, like a friend of mine who used to work offshore, and he left that and started working for himself so he could be here on shore and spend time with his kids. He said it was the same problem. He said, I'm never home with my kids, and that was killing him. And his kids weren't happy either. So he changed careers so he could be home more. I mean, when I got laid off from the aviation business years ago, which I loved that line of work, but I told you then, I'm like, if I'm going to change careers, now's the time to do it. And if I stay in this career, I'm going to be living out of a suitcase 3 to 6 months out of the year.
Yeah,
just like I had been.
You were gone a lot.
So it was one of those situations where it was like, I made the decision and I took that step down in pay, because I lost probably 25% of my income making that jump. And I've made it up. Obviously, I've taken a few promotions. I've moved back up, and I'm making better money than I ever was there, with a lot better benefits and better work-life balance. But I'm not going to lie, there was a moment of swallow my pride involved, to know that I'm giving up this career where I'm good at. I'm good, and I have a reputation, and I'm effective, and I can make good money. But this puts me home more. And with our daughter being like about that big at the time, I felt that pull, like I'm needed at home right now. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's what I would tell fathers out there is, like, I totally understand if you're in a career field where, like, you have to work a lot. And I get that. And, my father, he worked a lot. And a lot of that was because the career field he was in, he was on 24-hour call. Like, I can remember a Father's Day. He came home from work, which was unusual. He was working on a weekend to begin with. But he came home, and he had called my mom and said, hey, I'm on my way home. So, like, I had the barbecue pit fired up, ready to go. I mean, we were, like, ready to start Father's Day as soon as he walked in the door. He got through the front door, was home less than 5 minutes, got a phone call on the work phone, kissed my mom, and headed back out the door, and we didn't see him again until the next morning. Mm-hmm. On Father's Day, he'd already been working. He got called back out. Was out for another 10 or 12 hours. Yeah. And it was rough. I mean, I understood why he was gone, but I'm sure it wasn't fun for him.
Yeah.
But I would say that even in those instances where, like, my father did work that much, he made sure that when he was home, he was present. Mm-hmm. Like, he was constantly, most of the stuff I learned to do around the house, like working on cars, working on the house, traditional man stuff, I learned that from him. Like, I don't think he ever slept, because he was if he wasn't at work, he was constantly keeping up his responsibilities as a husband and working with his 2 boys to make sure we knew everything we were supposed to know as men. So, I mean, that's all I can say is, like, everybody has to find that work-life balance that makes their family work. But for God's sakes, the time you have left with your family, just make it work. Make it count.
Yeah. I know this episode's not going to go very much longer, but I keep having this person, a friend of mine, in the back of my head, who is a single mom. I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but I guess what I'm trying to say is she has a son, so she's not going to be able to really show him what it really means to be a man or to be a husband or whatever. And their marriage did fall apart, and for reasons they just happen sometimes.
Knowing the situation, I lay most of that at the feet of the boy's father, which is going to make it even harder for him to figure out how to be a man and a husband himself one day, because he hasn't had the best example shown to him.
Right. But still, he still needs to be present. But I'm just using him as a reference, but I know that most single family or single parent households, it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes, father of the children just has never been present, will never be present.
Goes out for milk and never comes back.
Right. And that just will never happen. But, what was very nice to see this morning, there was a couple of people on Facebook who were making posts for Father's Day, and it was towards the men who had stepped up to be the father to her children that they needed.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't that, their blood father wasn't present ever, never wanted to be present. And we have a man like that in our family that has stepped up to be the father, a father figure for those kids.
And I've seen him. He regards those two as two of his children.
Yeah.
Like there doesn't appear to be any emotional distinction for me from my perspective of like, oh, those are my stepkids. Like, no, those are my kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they are my girlfriend, fiance. I'm not sure what their official title is.
Girlfriend.
Okay, they are my girlfriend's kids, so they're my kids.
Yeah.
Because like I love her, therefore I love them. It's like it's a very honest and heartwarming, thing to behold.
Yeah.
But I've said this to, in particular, a friend of mine who never had children, and he's an older gentleman. Him and his wife just never had kids. But I've always been very quick to point out to men that don't have children, I'm like, there are still a lot of ways you can mentor a child, because unfortunately, there's a lot of kids out there that don't have a father around. But I believe in the depths of my soul, they still need that strong male role model to show them how to be a man, to show them what it means to, protect their girlfriend, protect their wife, to be a positive masculine influence in the world around them. Mm-hmm. And if that child doesn't have that influence, there's nothing stopping you from mentoring that child if that family is willing to allow you to kind of take up that mantle, and if you're willing to take it up. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it makes you stepdad. Sometimes it makes you Uncle Bill, even though you're not really an uncle, you're just a good family friend. But
right.
like those are the kinds of things that I encourage other men to do, is because I feel like that strong, positive, masculine influence is very important. And I believe that even if you haven't taken it upon yourself to have children, you can still pass that on to other people. Because like you have nieces and nephews, you have neighbors, there's somebody out there who would really benefit from you setting that example. Yeah, I believe, at least.
Yeah. So masculinity is not toxic.
No, and like understand when people talk about toxic masculinity, it frustrates me, because like I
agree, it was a joke.
I know.
Okay.
But since we're there.
Yeah, we're there.
But like I don't think masculinity is toxic. I think that there are toxic personalities. I think that there are narcissists. I think that there are abusers. I think that there are people that are greedy and selfish, and that is not linked to masculinity. That is, femininity is equally capable and guilty of being selfish or greedy or narcissistic or whatever.
I agree.
And like we talk about all the time about how husband or wife can grenade a marriage by indulging in any of those behaviors. What I do think is worth pointing out, though, is that, like, to me, what masculinity means is that you are called to be. I'm going to have to use you and I as the example, which probably works most of the time. But like, I feel like between the two of us, like, I am usually the less emotional one, more rational. Sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes that's a bad thing. Because, like, you and I have talked about how, like, I'm emotionally retarded sometimes. Like, there's a situation that I can't figure out why everybody's so mad, and then you have to explain to me like I'm a toddler, like, this is why their feelings were hurt, Phil. And I'm like, my bad. But then there are times when that ultra-rational, not being susceptible to emotional pull allows me to kind of cut through all the noise and get right down to the best decision very quickly, because I'm like, emotions, trash can. Let's focus on the facts and let's make an important decision based on what makes sense. Mm-hmm. But by having both of us here, we balance each other out. Whereas I feel like one of us without the other would kind of fall into their own proclivities. And I also think masculinity means, we talked earlier about being the bad cop. Good cop, bad cop. I'm always going to be that guy that says, if you hurt my daughter, I'm going to put your head on a pike in the front yard. As an example to all the rest of the boys. But I feel like that's my place as protector. Sometimes it means I have to be a grizzly bear. Sometimes it means I get to be a teddy bear with my daughter, grizzly bear to everybody else. That's just the way it is. Mm-hmm. I also think that masculinity, at the end of the day, is showing your children that you can be firm and loving at the same time. Because, like, this was very important to me when Piper was growing up, was that if I had to discipline her, if she had to go in the corner, if she had to get a talking to, anything like that, we finished with a hug.
Yeah.
I always wanted her to know, I'm not doing this because I'm angry with you. I'm doing this because I'm trying to teach you something. And it was always this, like, I love you so much, I'm punishing you even though I'd rather not. And it's also, I mean, masculinity to me is also about a different way of loving than what I believe most mothers would give to their children.
I can see that, especially when you use you and I as an example.
Which, whether we're a great representation of the rest of the world, I can't say. I just know this is what I have to offer. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I think masculinity is sorely lacking in young men. I feel like some of that, call me conspiracy theorist if you must, but I feel like some of that has been kind of social engineering and...
Oh, God, yes. I'm not going to call you a conspiracy theorist. I think anyone with a rational mind can look at the situation in this country now and say, you know, we are seriously causing damage to men in this country. Yeah.
And like I said, I mean, I think that trend of, like, trying to damage men, I think it's counterproductive, because I don't see a lot of people who would look at a mother and say, well, moms are nothing, we don't need moms. Like, you know, we obviously need moms. There's a lot of good reasons why we need moms in households with children. But I feel like we really...
Well, if you want a household with children, you kind of need women.
Same thing could be alleged towards men.
Yes, absolutely. It's not like we're going to have children on our own.
I mean...
That happened one time. Hasn't happened again.
You know, not to be like that super Christian person, but that's what I am. But, like, I think God designed us very intentionally to require man and woman to produce children. I don't think that was an accident. I don't think that was a whoops. I think it was, like, intentional design. Like, that was a design element.
Yeah.
And I would say that if we are biologically required to have man and woman to produce child, then we're probably psychologically required to have man and woman present. Mm-hmm. And for woman to be present in her femininity and man to be present in his masculinity. Because, Jesus Christ, can you imagine if both of us were feminine?
No, I can't imagine that.
Or if both
I don't want to imagine that.
or if both of us were masculine. I mean, I don't know. I feel like you need both those elements for balance. I think you need both those elements for healthy rearing of children.
This would be a totally different podcast if that were the case.
No, we wouldn't be married.
No, we wouldn't.
I like you as you are, you know, pretty and feminine, and not trying to compete with me for who has the biggest muscles in the house.
I know it's me, but I let you have that.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll wrap this one up. We've got a little bit of work to do here and then go see some friends for the day.
Yep.
And then tomorrow I get to go see my own father for Father's Day, who I already texted, and I thanked him for trying to for trying to steer me in the right direction, even when I was too stubborn to see it.
He's a good dad.
He's a good dad. My father's a great father. He did a damn fine job raising me and my brother, I think. And
and your mom's a good mom.
My mom's a good mom.
I don't want her to listen and think, wait, what about me?
No, well, but that's why at the very top of the show I said, moms are our blueprint for who we look for as a wife. And dads are blueprints for how we become fathers and husbands. But
all right. Well, happy Father's Day again. Thank you guys for tuning in to the live show. Audio will drop on Tuesday, like always. And again, we're always trying to build the show. So like, comment, share, tell your friends, family, whatever, subscribe. All those things that you're supposed to do and you should know by now because we live in a social media age. So we'll see you next week. And that's it. Goodbye.
bye, everybody.